Good morning, Brett.
What's up, Gary?
Oh, man, I've had fun this morning. I've had a good show, just having some fun. Hey, before we get to Auburn, I do want to ask you, as a sports fan, as a analyst, sportscaster, were you watching the NFL game last night? At the end, okay. It's such a big story this morning, and again, I'm with everybody. Listen, what Myles Garrett did was unconscionable. It goes against everything that we think about with sportsmanship. He should be suspended for the rest of the season. I wonder if Freddie Kitchens has got control of that team. I really do. Having said that, I think one thing that's getting lost, and I wonder if you agree with me, Mason Rudolph had a terrible game. He cost the Steelers the game. Their defense played well. He played horrible. 4 interceptions. He was frustrated. Garrett blew past the left tackle on that play and sacked him. There were some words exchanged, but he did initially grab Garrett's face mask. Now, I'm not making any excuses for what Garrett did, but let's don't get lost. This is getting lost a little bit, that if he didn't grab Myles Garrett's face mask in the first place and try to pull his helmet off, maybe it wouldn't have happened. So I'm not going to just let him get out of this thing blameless either. But it was ugly, and that's not what kids need to see. It's not you can kill somebody with a helmet, and I guess we're lucky that Mason Rudolph didn't get killed.
You know, a couple of things on this, Gary, and I understand exactly what you're saying, and I hear all of that, and I'm kind of the same way. He was provoked, but what you got to do, and after I've heard so many different analysts by now talk about that, is that you got to slow your roll a little bit when emotions get high, and when you see another player's helmet come off, there should be an alarm go off in your head that, okay, we need to all chill out.
Absolutely.
And you know, the aggression, and again, we've all done things in our past when we've been heated, that when you stop and you calm down, you look back and go, man, I can't believe I just did that. You know, and you know, Pouncey even said last night when he ran in there, he blacked out temporarily. He didn't even remember what he was doing to try to get Garrett off of Rudolph. And the deal is that, you know, that's how quick you can make a mistake in life and do something in a moment of rage and not really be that person, because I don't think Myles Garrett is that person. You know, he was very, embarrassed in the locker room. I thought he handled that part well. And you're right, Mason Rudolph provoked him, but even though he was provoked, he took it way past another level.
Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah.
And that's the problem now. And I think now that he's sitting back today looking back, is that and I tweeted this out last night, I don't think he realizes how bad that could have gotten. You know, if he'd have hit him the correct way in the head with that helmet, as much force as he did when he slung it, he could have killed him.
Yeah.
And, you know, now what could we be sitting here talking about on a Friday morning, and from an NFL's perspective, what would they be doing if they had just had a player killed on the field by another player using a helmet as a weapon? And so I just think, look, it's still a bad situation, but it could have been horrific. I mean, it could have been maybe one of the worst things. And that act last night was one of the worst things I've ever seen on a football field.
Yeah, it's just a shame, and it's a reminder that it's a violent sport, but that's why you have rules and officials, and you can't, like you said, you can't let the emotion overcome you, and you lose your mind for a couple seconds, and, you know, lives are impacted.
Well, and then the same thing for Jermaine Whitehead, who's a former Auburn player. You know, Myles Garrett's a Texas A&M guy. You know, and, you know, they carry on the legacy of the universities they play for. And it's embarrassing when, you know, when one of your players goes out there and does something like that. And, you know, Jermaine Whitehead gets on social media after he didn't play well. And, you know, he bought into all these, you know, Twitter, to me, Twitter's great, but Twitter can be a cesspool because it gives everybody a voice. And that's fine, but everybody's an expert and everybody's got a comment to make. And when you're at a professional level, you can't read all that stuff. And Jermaine Whitehead got caught up reading all that stuff, and then he fires back comments about killing people and meeting them somewhere and come get some and all this kind of stuff. And then now all of a sudden he doesn't have a job because he lost his cool on social media. So we just live in a different world now, and you have to understand that every single thing that you do is you're accountable for. And when you lose your head in a moment of rage, just be prepared to pay the consequence.
Indeed. It's unfortunate. All right, let's get to there's a lot of rivalries, but there's only one that is the South's oldest rivalry. It is Georgia and Auburn. Let's see, this will be the 124th meeting. I remember a few years ago when I think they were dead even. Right now, Georgia leads 59-56 with 8 ties, but great rivalry and tremendous game usually. Some of the great games in college football history have taken place when Auburn and Georgia play, and there's a lot on the line. I mean, clearly for Georgia, they're number 4 in the college football playoff rankings. They're going to go to Atlanta regardless whether they win this game or not. But they got to win this game to keep their national championship hopes alive. And Auburn can still have a special season. And let's be honest, if Auburn were to beat Georgia and beat Alabama and get to 10-2, they might have an argument for the playoff depending on what happens. So this is a huge game tomorrow for both these football teams.
Yeah, you're right, Gary. Auburn, so many teams' playoff hopes hinge on what Auburn does. I mean, it's kind of crazy. If you look at Oregon and where they are right now, they want Auburn to continue to keep winning and keep, because that loss looks even better for them. And, Georgia, we determine whether they'll have a chance to compete for a national championship or not. And then, of course, Alabama in a couple of weeks, they can't afford to lose another game. So they've got to come in and play well on the road and in a hostile environment. So, it kind of runs through Auburn. And unfortunately, Auburn's got 2 close losses to 2 tough opponents on the road. But you can't worry about what's happened. It's like when toothpaste is out of the tube, it's already out. So you can't worry about that. You can only worry about what you can control from here on out. And then if Auburn wins out, they end up going 10-2, and they put themselves, like you said, right there in the argument of, hey, look at our resume. Look at our strength of schedule. Look at what we've been able to accomplish. So Georgia comes in, and this is an eerily similar team to Auburn. If you look at the way they play defense, if you look at the offensive numbers, they score 33.7 points a game, and Auburn scores 32.7 points a game, and their defense is phenomenal. And Auburn's defense has really played phenomenal. They're giving up just a little over 10 points a game, and Auburn's giving up a little over 17 points a game. So something's going to have to give there. The total yards are right there together on what they do, and both teams like to run the football, and it's just a very eerie similarity between both of these teams. And Jake Fromm's numbers and Bo Nix's numbers are eerily similar. I think Jake Fromm's thrown for a little over 1,800 yards, and Bo Nix has thrown for right at 1,800 yards. And Jake Fromm's got 13 touchdowns, and Bo Nix has got 12 touchdowns. So, I mean, it's crazy. So, obviously, something will have to give. I think Auburn getting Boobie Whitlow back, hopefully close to 100% tomorrow will help be a difference maker.
Yeah, you mentioned the quarterbacks, and you're right, because I had looked at the same stat line, and I was caught off guard, to be honest with you, because my perception is more based on experience than anything else. But my perception is that the one advantage Georgia has is at quarterback. I mean, you look at Jake Fromm and you say to yourself, I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He was a Heisman candidate going into the season. And then Bo Nix, like most freshmen in his situation, has been a little bit up and down. But when you look at the numbers, they're not that far apart. So maybe I'm wrong, but I guess a lot of people are, because I guarantee you, if you ask people off the street who has the advantage at quarterback, Jake Fromm, Georgia with Jake Fromm or Auburn with Bo Nix, probably to a man, they're going to say Georgia with Jake Fromm.
Yeah, and I still think they probably do have an edge there, obviously from experience, and again, but only 61 yards separate them in total passing.
Yeah,
from and in one TD off from Bo Nix to Jake Fromm in total touchdowns. And so it is crazy to think of when you look at it on paper how close these two guys are. But Bo Nix has been bad away from Jordan-Hare Stadium. He's been outstanding inside of Jordan-Hare Stadium. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference, I think, for him in this game, is that he'll be in the friendly confines of Jordan-Hare Stadium. And Jake Fromm, the last time he made a trip to Jordan-Hare Stadium, he struggled mightily. And I think him not having the season that a lot of people felt like he was going to have coming off of a game where he threw 3 picks against South Carolina. That's in the back of a guy's head.
Sure.
We all that have competed and been in sports and done different things, when you perform bad, if you're out on the golf course and you hit a bad shot, then you're thinking about that shot the next time you get to your ball and about to hit your next shot. So Jake Fromm knows it's going to be a tough environment, that he can't make mistakes, because I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. And so turnovers will be huge. Special teams will be huge. And the same for Bo Nix. Bo Nix cannot all of a sudden start making mistakes inside that stadium, because it'll cost him, because the 2 games Auburn has lost, Bo Nix has struggled. And he struggled against Oregon. Yes, he made a great play at the end of that game to win it, but he's a different quarterback inside that stadium as opposed to being outside.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question that fans discuss a lot, and again, it's such an odd dynamic with Gus Malzahn, because the guy's a good coach. In fact, again, you could look at his numbers and say he's certainly one of the top 4 or 5 coaches in the SEC. But there's always a but with Malzahn, and a lot of it depends on what happens in the games against Georgia and Alabama, because of where they fall in the schedule, who they are, so forth and so on. A couple of years ago, he beats Georgia and Alabama when both were ranked number 1. Man, it's you think Auburn's going to go to the playoff. They have to play Georgia again. They get beat in the SEC championship game. But he gets the extension. Now we sit here today. Once again, the Arkansas job is open. Auburn has had a really good year. You look at the 2 teams they lost to, man. A lot of teams would lose to those teams and still could be in the playoff conversation. But you get the feeling that how he's viewed by Auburn people, none of that matters. It's going to come down to what happens in these 2 games against Georgia and Alabama. If he's successful, he'll be the toast of the town again. And if he's not, I get the feeling there are going to be a lot of Auburn people that are saying, hey, man, don't let the door hit you, and then you know what? Go into Arkansas. Is that too simplified, or am I onto something there with how he's going to be viewed? Is going to be directly related to what happens in these 2 games.
No, you described it perfect. I mean, I think you nailed it as good as anybody can nail it. These 2 games, it's not about just this year. 8-4 with this schedule, we all said going in. I remember me and you talking about it like it was yesterday before the season started, talking about this schedule. And if Auburn won 8 or 9 games with this schedule, you would think Gus Malzahn would be as safe as anybody in the country. And I still think he will be. But it will be judged, the season will be judged on how Auburn finishes. Because, yes, they beat Oregon, but they've been on the road to Florida and LSU and had a chance to win both those games and performed poorly on offense, and the defense played well enough to win both of them. So at home, the difference has been the offense has been much better. And this is not the Georgia team of the last couple of years. They're still talented. They still are Georgia. They're still there in the top 4, obviously, but this is a team that can be beat. And, you don't get caught looking ahead. The Iron Bowl will take care of itself. This is what Auburn's got to focus on right now, and it's the long-term what Gus Malzahn's been able to do against the Big 4, okay? And when I mean the Big 4, the one game on the schedule every year like a Wisconsin or an Oregon or a Clemson, and then the three teams that you get judged by every year as an Auburn fan or as an Auburn coach is Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. And his record against those teams is not very good. And he hasn't been able to go on the road and beat LSU. He hasn't been able to go to Athens and beat Georgia, and he hasn't been able to go to Alabama and beat Alabama. The only times he's been able to get any wins has been at Jordan-Hare.
Right.
So this sets up for him to have an opportunity, and Auburn fans are going, well, if we can't beat those teams this year at home with this type of defense, then what makes us think that this is ever going to change or ever going to get any different? So it's not just about this year. It's about the track record of his success against those particular teams.
Well stated. Having said all that, Georgia is a 3-point favorite at Jordan-Hare tomorrow on CBS shortly after 2:30. What's your prediction?
I really think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think that the defenses are going to shine in this game. I think if you look at Swift, he didn't have a very good game running the football the last time he was last week, but he busted a 65-yard run. And I think Auburn can keep him bottled up, but where he hurts you and where he builds his yardage is hitting one of those big hitters. Mm-hmm. And he did it to Auburn in the SEC championship game a couple of years ago. And Auburn can't allow that to happen. And I think the same thing for Georgia. They cannot allow DJ Williams or Boobie Whitlow or whoever it might be to bust a long run. I think that can be the difference in the game. And I also think special teams will be a big part. Punt coverage. Auburn is terrible covering punts for whatever reason. And Georgia is very dynamic in the return game. And a few years back at Auburn, Georgia won a game 20-13 off a punt return because both offenses were struggling. They couldn't move the ball. And all of a sudden you look up and a punt return decides the game. I think that could happen easily again tomorrow for either team. So I think you got to be sound in the special teams. You got to take advantage of opportunities when you get them in the red zone. You can't squander those, and your defense has to continue to play the way it's been. But I do think Bo Nix is uncannily calm in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Things are a little bit slower for him in the confines of that stadium, and I think he'll play maybe his best game against the best team to date, other than LSU, which was on the road. But inside Jordan-Hare Stadium, this will be the best team to come in to this point this year. And so I feel like he can be a difference maker, positive or negative. And I think he'll play calm. I think Auburn will run the ball and play field position, and I think Auburn wins the game 24-17.
All right. You heard it from Brett Pritchard. All right, you got the Auburn Blitz coming up later. I know football will be the main topic, but Auburn basketball, whoa, what an exciting game that was at South Alabama the other night. That was some fun. Tigers pull it out by one. Let all the listeners in on how they can catch up with the Auburn Blitz.
Yeah, Gary. Sports Blitz Live on Facebook. That's sports with a Z. You can look us up there. Go like our page. And we're on every single day from noon to 1, Auburn Blitz. And 100.3 now up and running in Auburn. We'll be on shortly in Auburn, so we're excited about being on and blasting the show throughout Auburn. So appreciate your opportunity, the opportunity to be on your show every week, Gary.
Enjoyed it, Brett. Talk to you next week.
Thank you, buddy.